Okay, hello everybody. I am unfortunately not in school today. Not one, but two daughters are sick at home. So you will have the pleasure of having a chavruta with me instead, one on one, or maybe you're with a small group. Um, First and foremost, I hope you are being very respectful to our sub. We talked about this before. Number one, most important, more important than anything you're going to learn today with me, is the idea of being respectful to whoever's in the room. So I'm going to be hearing back from the sub who has been really pushing himself to be as respectful as possible. And if for whatever reason you haven't started off on the best foot, let's bear down and have a fantastic rest of the period. Okay, I believe in you. You're a holy Jew. And whoever's listening to this is a holy Jew. And let's be strong. Okay, number two. Whoever has been the substitute today, hopefully handed out to you the following sheet. It says understanding the contradiction, missing Havdalah in Mariv. So this is a worksheet to understand the four steps of the Gemara's contradiction. Now, talking about it yesterday and even thinking about it later last night, I realize it's very complicated to keep all of these steps in mind, right? Because really, you can divide the breakdown of this contradiction into four steps. We have first the Gemara presenting a halacha. It's the Gemara teaches something. Then it brings up a breita, which is a source right from the times of the Mishnah. It brings up a breita that contradicts or goes against this Gemara. Once we understand the breita, we can really explain the question that comes up when we compare the breita and the Gemara. And then we have the Gemara's answer. So there's really four steps here. And I realized, it's a little complicated to keep all of that in mind. And even when I was explaining it yesterday, I realized that some of us maybe were understanding it, and many of us were not understanding it. Also, I did mark your tests. Unfortunately, I'm not there right now, so I can't give them back to you. People in general did well on the tests, but the section that most of you struggled with was the question about the Metive, like really understanding and explaining the Gemara's question. Not just giving me some information, but explaining it as a question. So I realized, if a lot of people are getting something like that incorrect or they're struggling with that, it means I didn't do as good of a job as I could of explaining it. So for this sugya that we're learning, again, where I'm missing Havdalah in Mariv, and when I say Havdalah, I mean the paragraph of Atachon Antanu, I really want to go step by step and make sure we're all on the same page understanding this. By the end of today's class, you are going to have filled out this entire sheet, each of the four steps of the contradiction. Again, explaining the Gemara, the Breita, the question that comes up when we look at that Breita, and then the Gemara's answer. So we're going to go over all of these four steps together. When this is done, you should put this sheet in a page protector. I'm going to be collecting them tomorrow and making sure that they're perfect. Because this, to me, understanding these steps and how the Gemara thinks is going to be the most important, both in terms of learning, first and foremost, but on our next test, this is the type of question I'm going to be asking to make sure you can understand each step of a longer section, really understanding each breakdown, each step. Okay, so we're going to go through it together. As we're going through it, you can fill it out in your sheet. I have an answer key that's going to go with this, and it's going to be a lot of writing today, so I'm warning you right now. But I do want you to get down everything that we wrote down today. Anything that is going to be explained, I want it to be written down. Even though it's a lot, it might scare you, but I know you can do it. Okay? Here we go. Let's understand the contradiction in four steps. Step number one. Here's my own answer sheet. Let's try to get this in the frame here. Make sure you're seeing everything that I'm seeing. Understanding the contradiction. Okay, you're already seeing a lot of writing. Don't be too scared. Here we go. Step number one is the Gemara. Okay, let's go through the Gemara first. And let's read it. I'm going to read it together. As I'm reading it, I want you to write this down on your sheet. So for step one, the Gemara, we're going to write that here where it says in your sheet. Step one, the Gemara. Do you have to write word for word like I'm saying? I would like you to. I would like you to write all of this down. If for whatever reason you think you can say it in a slightly different way that makes sense, that's okay. But I want all of this information down. Here we go. Step number one, the Gemara. So the Gemara starts by giving a halacha to us, teaching us a halacha, a law. The Gemara said, that if I miss mincha on Shabbat, right? This is a case that happened. Nathaniel told us. Nathaniel, here's a shout out. You said that this happened to you this past Shabbos. If Nathaniel missed mincha on Shabbos, what should Nathaniel have done? I need to repeat, or Nathaniel would need to repeat, I don't want to embarrass you, right? A person would need to repeat Shemona Esrei at Mariv on Motzei Shabbos twice. Okay, you got to say 2 Shemona Esreis at Mariv, which is what we learned in the last sugya. So on Saturday night, you're going to say 2 Marivs. But there's one additional wrinkle when it happens on Shabbos. When you miss a mincha on Shabbos, there's an additional point here. Because in Mariv on Motzei Shabbos, there's an addition that we say in the Shemona Esrei. In the second paragraph, in the second bracha, not the second bracha, sorry, in the fourth bracha of Atah Chonein L'Adam Da'at, we add the special paragraph of Havdalah, which is Atah Chonantanu. So again, if I miss Mincha on Shabbat, I need to repeat Shemona Esrei at Mariv on Motzei Shabbat twice. In the first Shemona Esrei that I say, I need to say Havdalah. So in the first Shemona Esrei, which is my Mariv, I need to say the special paragraph of Atah Chonantanu. In the second Shemona Esrei, maybe I'll just change this up, but in the second Shemona Esrei, which is making up for Mincha, I do not say Havdalah. Okay? So again, if I was going to make this in bullet points maybe, in the first Shemona Esrei, I need to say Havdalah. In the second Shemona Esrei, I do not say Havdalah. Okay? Very good. But the Gemara goes on to say, what happens if I make another mistake? Not just that I missed Mincha on Shabbat, but when I started repeating my Marivs, I mixed up the order. But let's say I made a mistake, says the Gemara, and I forgot to say Havdalah in the first Shemona Esrei, but I said it in the second Shemona Esrei. So again, I missed Havdalah in Shemona Esrei number 1, but I said it in Shemona Esrei number 2, so what happens? Okay, remember, I was supposed to say Havdalah in the first Shemona Esrei, because that's Mariv. But let's say I messed up, and I didn't say Havdalah in that first Shemona Esrei. So what do? The Gemara answers, your first Shemona Esrei, where you were supposed to say Havdalah, but you missed it, does not count as a Shemona Esrei. Please write that in big, write it in bold. If you want to highlight it, that's fine. If you did not say Havdalah when you were supposed to in Mariv on Motzei Shabbos, it doesn't count. It's like missing Yalev Yavo on Rosh Chodesh. Your Shemona Esrei doesn't count. It does not count as a Shemona Esrei. Your second Shemona Esrei, though, where you did say Havdalah, the Gemara says that will count as your Mariv, and you'll have to say a third Shemona Esrei to make up for your missed Mincha. Okay? So, give me a little space here, make that a little easier. Okay, so that's basically the halach over here. If I missed Havdalah in the first Shemona Esrei, it does not count as a Shemona Esrei. I'm going to have to say it again. So, but this is now the key point. And if you have 2 different color pens, you can write it in 2 different colors, but I really want you to make sure you write down the key point we get from this Gemara is that the Gemara is saying from this, if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv, Shemona Esrei, on Saturday night, your tefillah, your Shemona Esrei does not count. Your Shemona Esrei does not count. If you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shemona Esrei, your Shemona Esrei does not count. Right? That's why only your second Shemona Esrei here counted, and you have to say a third Shemona Esrei to make up for your mincha. That's the key point from this Gemara. That's step 1. All of this is step 1, and you should have written all of this where I wrote step 1, the Gemara. You might have to write a little small. You may need to space it out a little more. Before I print this out, I can give you a little more space, right, to write this down. But that's what you want to say. That's what you want to write where it says the Gemara on your sheet. This is the steps of the Gemara. It explains what you do if you missed Atah Chonantanu. And what emerges is, if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shemona Esrei, Your Shmona Esrei does not count. Okay? Let's go to step 2. Step 2 is the Gemara quotes a Breita. Now, we've said the word Breita a lot, and it's important to know what a Breita is. A Breita are like Mishnahs. They were written earlier than the Gemara. They were written in the time of the Mishnah. But when Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was collecting all of these teachings to make up his Mishnah, these were teachings that were not included. They were collected maybe by other Tanaim, other rabbis of the time, but they were not included in the Mishnah. But they have a very strong status about them. They basically have the status of a Mishnah. They're considered very, very strong. And if a Breita says something that's different than the Gemara, that's a problem. It means we have to explain our Gemara better. So that's what the Gemara goes on to say. That's very nice what you just said, Gemara, that if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shmona Esrei, your Shmona Esrei does not count. But this is contradicted in a Breita. This is contradicted in a Breita. What does the Breita say? The Breita, I keep writing a little bit differently. So please, this next part you're going to write down in step 2 on your page, the Breita. The Breita lists a bunch of examples of times where if you miss a part of Shmona Esrei, you need to repeat it. And it gives some examples. So it lists a bunch of examples where if you miss a part or a section of Shmona Esrei, you need to repeat it. And the examples it gives is, if you missed Mashiv Haruach, for example, which is relevant now because we're supposed to be saying Mashiv Haruach right now. If you missed Mashiv Haruach Umarida Geshem, or if you missed, and you can write this in Hebrew, you don't write it in this funny English that I wrote, just Hebrew doesn't work as well in Max. V'tein talu atar livracha. So if you miss any of those sections, the Breita said you have to repeat Shemona Esrei. You need to repeat it. But the Breita continues. And this is the part that's relevant. Some of you, when I asked you to explain the contradiction, you focused on V'tein talu atar livracha. That's just on the side. The Breita continues and says, if you missed Havdalah in Mariv on Motzei Shabbos, which is exactly our situation, our case. You missed Havdalah in Mariv on Motzei Shabbos, you do not repeat Shmona Esrei. I'll repeat that. No pun intended. You do not repeat Shmona Esrei. You do not repeat Shmona Esrei. If you missed Havdalah, your Shmona Esrei is still good. In other words, from this Breita, again, which is earlier than the Gemara, which, again, the Gemara can't, again, if the Gemara argues with this, it's a problem because Gemaras should not be arguing with Breitas. That's a problem. From this Breita, the key point is, the Breita is saying, if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shmona Esrei, your Tefillah does count. Your Tefillah does count. Whoa. Let's go back to this black box over here. From the Gemara, we said, if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shmona Esrei, your Shmona Esrei does not count. But the Breita is saying, if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shmona Esrei, your Tefillah does count. Okay, so please write down these different steps of the Breita in step number 2. If you need to pause, this is in step number 2, write that down. If you need to pause the tape so you can write that down, that's fine. But I want you to get these 2 steps down. As soon as you get these 2 steps down, you're ready for the question and the answer, which I'll explain in a moment. Now we're going to get into video number 2. You're going to see those steps. But these are really our 2 sections that we have over here. Key point number 1. Gemara say, if you don't say Havdalah in Mariv Shmona Esrei, right? If I was going to, try to make this into a little chart, which maybe I'll start the third, the section of, right? That's what we see. The Gemara says your Shmona Esrei does not count. The Breita is saying your Shmona Esrei does count. So please get those 2 steps down and then click on video number 2. Okay, great job.